The cheap tequila burned a familiar trench down Javier Guerrero's throat. It was the only thing that felt real anymore. The bounty in his pocket, a few damp pesos for dragging a drunk bail jumper out of a Tijuana dive, was already turning back into liquor. Javi leaned against the peeling wall of his one-room apartment, the single fan blade wobbling overhead, chopping the suffocating air. He was a ghost in his own life, haunted by the one he'd failed. 2 years. 2 years since Matamoros. 2 years since his partner, Luis, had been found. Or rather, asterisk parts times of Luis had been found. The spine, boiled clean. The hands, missing. The head, dumped in a vacant lot, the jaw cracked open in a permanent, silent scream. They had been close, too close. Investigating a New Times, Brujeria Times cult that was making the cartels nervous. Javi, then a rising star in the Times Policia Federal asterisk, had warned Luis to wait for backup. Luis, always brave, always stupid, went in alone. Javi's superiors didn't want a war with a religious group. They wanted quiet. When Javi screamed for vengeance, for an investigation, they gave him a choice: a transfer to a desk in Chihuahua, or his badge. He'd thrown the badge in his Times Commandante's Times face. The official report read, "Killed in a cartel crossfire." The case was buried. Javi was disgraced, discharged, and left to drown. And he had been drowning until tonight. A package was waiting for him, propped against his door. A small cardboard box, emitting a faint, sweet-rot smell that instantly sobered him. It smelled like Matamoros. His hands, thick with scars and tremors, tore it open. Inside, resting on a bed of dried herbs, were 2 items. The first was a laminated press pass. The smiling, idealistic face of his younger brother stared up at him. Asterisk, Miguel Guerrero. Brownsville Chronicle. Asterisk. The second item made Javi's stomach clench. It was a Times Ninkisi asterisk. A ritual charm. A small, crude bundle of sticks and feathers bound tightly with sinew. From its center, a single yellowed piece of human bone, intricately carved, protruded like a diseased tooth. He knew what this was. It was a message, a signature. Miguel. His kid brother, the Times Gringo Times journalist who believed a pen could stop a bullet, had gone to Matamoros. He'd gone digging in the same grave that had swallowed Luis. And now, the grave was opening for him. Javi dropped the bottle. It shattered, tequila pooling on the cracked tile like piss. He walked to the rusted weapons locker under his cot. He didn't feel drunk. He didn't feel haunted. He felt nothing at all. Just a cold, clean click as he chambered around into his Browning high power. He was going back. Matamoros, 1989. The city didn't just swelter, it rotted. The air was a tangible thing. A thick soup of diesel fumes, spoiled shrimp from the Gulf, slaughterhouse blood, and the omnipresent cloying scent of Times Copal Times incense. It was a city of walls, walls of cinder block, walls of corruption, and walls of fear. Javi crossed the border at twilight, melting into the human traffic, his face a hard mask under a stained baseball cap. He was just another broken man, in a town full of them. But this town was different. Here, the monsters were real. He started with the dregs, his old contacts. He found Esteban, once a fellow Times Federale asterisk, now a bloated wreck in a cheap uniform, taking Times Mordida Times from tourists on Alvaro Obregón. Javi, Esteban whispered, his eyes wide, refusing to meet Javi's gaze in the neon-lit cantina. Christ, you shouldn't be here. Miguel Guerrero, My brother. American press. He was asking questions. Esteban violently shook his head, sweat beading on his upper lip. No, Javi. You leave. Asterisk. Ahora. Asterisk. This isn't the Hernandez cartel. This isn't business. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a terrified hush. They're protected. From us. From the narcos. From God. Asterisk. El Padrino asterisk. He runs this town. Not the mayor. Not the boss. Asterisk. Him. Asterisk. El Padrino, Javi said. The name tasting like Adolfo Constanzo. The name from Luis's buried file. He's not just a Times Brujo asterisk man. Esteban hissed, grabbing Javi's arm. He's a god to them. They say he did a ritual to made the times, Jefe times of the Hernandez brothers, invisible. They walked into a Times, Federal Times roadblock, bullets flying, and walked out without a scratch. They Times believe Times him, Javi, and they kill for him. Where do I find him? You don't! Esteban recoiled, throwing a few pesos on the table. You go to the church. You pray. You get on the bridge and you run. They took your partner, Javi. They'll take you too. And they'll use every piece. Javi let him go. The fear was useful. It confirmed everything. He went to the cheap motel where Miguel had been staying. The manager, bought with $100 bill, let him into the room. It was clean. Too clean. But Miguel, bless his journalistic heart, was paranoid. Javi checked under the lip of the rusted air conditioner. Taped to the metal was a small, waterproof notebook. It was filled with Miguel's frantic scroll. Names, dates, links between high society kids, drug runners, and Times Palo Mayombe asterisk, and two names, circled over and over. Asterisk, El Padrino, asterisk, asterisk, Rancho Santa Elena, asterisk, and one more, asterisk, Sarah, asterisk, a phone number, asterisk, S, American student, my source, scared, knows the inner circle, asterisk. Javi was pocketing the notebook when a soft knock came at the door. He drew his Browning, pressing his back to the wall. Miguel, are you there? It's me, Sarah. Javi opened the door. She was the last thing he expected to see in this hellhole. She looked like she belonged on a college campus in Austin, not in a Matamoros flophouse. She was tall, blonde, pretty in a wholesome, all-American way. She wore jeans and a simple white blouse. Her eyes were wide with what looked like genuine terror. You're not Miguel, she breathed. I'm his brother, Javi. Her face crumpled in relief. Or a perfect imitation of it. Oh, thank God. I was so worried. He missed our meet. I'm Sarah. Sara Aldrete. She looked past him into the empty room. Where is he? Did you find him? He's missing, Javi said, his voice flat. He watched her. She bit her lip, her hands twisting together. Oh no! Oh God! He was right. He was getting too close. Close to what? Constanzo, she whispered, her eyes darting to the hallway. El Padrino. I'm a student at Texas Southmost. I came here for an anthropology paper on local folk beliefs. I met some people, rich kids. They invited me to parties. She shuddered. Javi, these aren't just parties. They're rituals. That's how I met Miguel. I was his source. I was telling him who was involved. He thought I was just a naive student, but I saw things. They worship Constanzo. They think he's a god, and they do things for him. Horrible things. What things? Sacrifices, she whispered, tears welling. Animals, at first, but then people, transients, dealers who crossed them. Miguel was investigating a string of disappearances. He thought Constanzo was providing magic protection to the Hernandez cartel in exchange for... She was good. She was perfect. She was confirming everything he already knew, building a foundation of trust. I think I know who has him, she said, her voice shaking. The inner circle. They call themselves the Apostles. They're the ones who do the holy work. They would have taken him to El Padrino. Where? Javi's voice was a growl. I can't be sure. But they talk about the ranch. A place in the desert. Rancho Santa Elena. She gripped his arm, her eyes pleading. They're having a big ritual tonight. A powerful one. If we're going to save him, we have to go times now, asterisk. I can get you close. I'm still one of them. They trust me. It was too fast. Too easy. But it was all he had. Get me in, Javi said. Get me to Constanzo. He's not a man, Javi, she whispered, her face pale. He's a monster. Good, Javi said, checking his magazine. I've killed monsters before. Sara Aldrete looked at the ex-cop, a man forged from rage and tequila, a brutal instrument ready to be aimed. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched the corner of her lips before she buried it in a mask of fear. We have to hurry, she said. The drive into the desert was silent. Sarah's pickup truck rattled over the moonlit washboard roads, leaving Matamoros and its fragile illusion of law behind. The real Mexico sprawled out before them, a vast, dark expanse of scrub brush and shadow. Javi sat in the passenger seat, his high power tucked in his waistband, a 12-gauge pump shotgun at his feet. He was watching Sarah. Her scared student act was holding, but the road was long. The silence stretched, and in it, Javi's instincts, honed by years of hunting men, were screaming. She was too calm. She drove the dangerous, unmarked roads with a familiarity that belied her story of being a simple student. You said they trust you, Javi said, breaking the silence. Why? Sarah kept her eyes on the road. I'm useful. I'm American. I'm clean-cut. I'm La Madrina, the godmother. That's their little joke. I bring in new people from the university. Rich kids from Brownsville looking for a thrill. They think it's just drugs and exotic religion. They don't see the truth until it's too late. And you just walk away? She finally looked at him. Her eyes, in the green glow of the dashboard, were cold. I'm a good actress, Javi. I'm surviving, just like you. The mask was slipping. Before Javi could press her, she slowed the truck, killing the headlights. We're here. We walk from this ridge. They have guards. In the distance, a single, low-slung ranch house and a large, windowless cinder block shed squatted in the darkness. Rancho Santa Elena. There were no lights, but Javi could smell it. The same smell from the package. Sweet rot, iron, and something else. Something hot and savory, like a barbecue. He felt the times. Ninky C. Times in his pocket. Its carved bone pressing against his thigh. The shed, Sarah whispered, pointing. That's there. Church. Miguel will be in there. El Padrino will be preparing. Guards? 2. At the front. Usually high, she said. The rest, the apostles, will be inside with him. Stay here, Javi commanded, grabbing the shotgun. No, she hissed, grabbing his arm. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "They know me. I have to be there. I'll tell them you're a new recruit. A special offering. Someone strong." A cold dread washed over Javi. Asterisk. A special offering. Asterisk. He remembered Esteban's words. Asterisk. They'll use every piece. Asterisk. He remembered Luis. Fine. Javi said. You talk. I walk. They moved like shadows. Javi, a step behind her. He saw the two guards, just as she'd said, leaning against a rusted pickup, sharing a cigarette. They were young, dressed in cheap cowboy shirts. They perked up when they saw Sarah.
La Madrina!
You're late, one of them said, his voice slurring slightly. El Padrino is impatient. I brought him, Sarah said, her voice different now. It was no longer the trembling whisper of a victim. It was full, melodic, and resonant with authority. A new warrior for the times Nganga asterisk. The guards looked at Javi. Javi looked at Sarah. Her face was serene, illuminated by the moonlight. She was smiling, not a smile of fear or relief, a smile of adoration. He's perfect, she said, looking straight at Javi. He killed 2 of the Hernandez guards in Laredo to get here. He has the strength El Padrino needs. The twist was a gut punch. She hadn't been helping him. She had been testing him, vetting him, leading him to slaughter. She wasn't a source. She was the high priestess. The 2 guards grinned, their eyes vacant and zealous. A warrior? Good. The Times Nanga Times is hungry tonight. One of them reached for Javi to pat him down. Give us your weapons, asterisk hermano asterisk. Only El Padrino's magic protects us here. Javi didn't hesitate. The pulp adventure was over. The horror had begun. He didn't aim for the Drava god. He aimed for Sarah. He grabbed her by the hair, yanking her head back, and pressed the muzzle of the high power to her temple. Call them off, he snarled. Sarah didn't scream. She laughed. A low, throaty laugh. He times his times perfect, Padrino. Can you feel his rage? She yelled toward the shed. The first guard, El Chino, lunged, pulling a machete. Javi shoved Sarah into him, creating a tangle of bodies. He fired the Browning twice, point blank. The shots were deafening. One guard dropped. The other, El Chino, roared, unfazed by the bullet that had grazed his shoulder. He believed he was invisible. Javi brought the butt of the pistol down on Sarah's face, dropping her cold. He ducked under the wild swing of El Chino's machete, the blade sparking on the gravel where his head had been. Javi didn't try to reason. He didn't try to arrest. He grabbed the shotgun, racked a shell, and fired the 12-gauge into the cultist's chest. The magic failed. The buckshot hammered the man off his feet, a red ruin. He stared at his own chest, his eyes wide with shocked betrayal, before he died. The door to the shed burst open. The smell hit him first. It was a physical blow. The coppery reek of an abattoir mixed with cheap incense, marijuana, and the thick, gagging stench of boiling decay. The shed was a human slaughterhouse. The walls were black, not with paint, but with dried blood and soot. Shelves lined the room, filled with human skulls, bones, and jars of murky liquid. In the center of the room, dominating everything, was the Times Nganga asterisk. It was an enormous, 3-legged iron cauldron, easily 5 feet across. A fire burned beneath it. A thick, dark, bubbling stew churned within it. Javi saw a hand, a foot, clumps of hair, and God knows what else boiling in the gray-black blood. This was their god, a soup of death. And standing before it, Silhouetted by the fire was Adolfo Constanzo. He was exactly as the file had described. Tall, handsome, with the chiseled features of a model and the burning hypnotic eyes of a messiah. He wore simple white pants, his muscled chest bare and smeared with blood. He was flanked by his apostles, half a dozen men and women, their eyes wide and white, pupils dilated, holding machetes and rusty shotguns. And chained to a steel post near the Times Nganga asterisk, covered in filth, was Miguel. He was alive, barely. His head was lolling, his eyes fluttering. He was being prepared. La Madrina was right. Constanzo's voice was soft, charismatic, with a faint Cuban accent. He showed no fear, only curiosity. You are strong. You carry a great darkness. My Times, Nganga Times, has been asking for a sacrifice like you. A Times Federale asterisk. A warrior. Let my brother go, Javi said, leveling the shotgun. His voice was steady. He was no longer a drunk. He was no longer a failure. He was an executioner. Constanzo smiled. It was a beautiful, terrifying smile. You don't understand. Bullets are wind. They cannot touch me. I am the vessel. I am the god. My children. He gestured to his apostles. They too are protected by the blood. One of the cultists, a massive man Javi recognized from a file photo as El Dubi, raised his shotgun. Let me show him the power, Padrino! Javi didn't wait. He fired. The buckshot slammed El Dubi against the wall, but the man, high on adrenaline, faith, and God knows what, didn't fall. He roared, leveling his own weapon. Javi dropped to one knee as the cultist's shotgun blast tore the air above his head, peppering the wall. Javi racked another shell and fired again, aiming for the head. The man's protection vanished in a red mist. Kill him! Constanzo screamed, his godlike composure shattering instantly. Bathe the Times, Nganga Times in his blood! The remaining apostles charged. They weren't soldiers. They were fanatics. A woman with a butcher knife. A man with a spiked club. They charged directly into Javi's line of fire, believing themselves immortal. Javi emptied the shotgun. Click, click, empty. He threw it at the woman's face, staggering her, and drew his Browning. He was a machine. 2 shots to the chest of the man with the club. Asterisk. Thump, thump, asterisk. He went down. The woman screeched, slashing at him. Javi pistol-whipped her, breaking her jaw, then shot her as she fell. It was a brawl in hell. He was out of ammo. The high-power slide locked back. Only one apostle was left, a skinny kid with a machete, standing between Javi and Miguel. The kid was shaking, the drugs and the magic warring with the reality of the bodies on the floor. He bleeds, the kid stammered, looking at his fallen friends. So does your god, Javi growled. He charged. The kid swung the machete. Javi, using his old police training, blocked the swing with his forearm, feeling the bone crack, but he didn't care. The pain was a fire. He drove his combat knife, drawn from his boot, up and under the kid's ribs. The kid gasped, and Javi threw him aside. Silence. It was just him and Constanzo. Between them, the bubbling, grotesque cauldron. Miguel was whimpering, starting to come to. Constanzo was staring, not at Javi, but at the blood on the floor. His invincible followers were dead. His magic was a lie. The beautiful face was crumbling into a mask of pure, pathetic terror. You can't, Constanzo whispered. I am chosen. You're just a man, Javi said, walking toward him, the bloody knife in his hand. And you bleed. Suddenly, the night erupted. The distant, rising wail of sirens. The Times whump 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 times of a helicopter. Javi looked back. Sarah was standing in the doorway, her face a bloody mess, a radio in her hand.
The Times Federales asterisk!
She screamed at Constanzo.
They're here! You!
She pointed at Javi. You Times called Times them. Javi had. Before he'd left with Sarah, one last call from a payphone. To a single, uncorrupted contact in Mexico City. He'd given them the ranch's location. If you don't hear from me by dawn, send everyone. Constanzo looked at Sarah, then at Javi, then at the approaching lights. He was trapped. The god was cornered. No! Constanzo shrieked. They can't take me! I won't let them! Elio! He screamed at one of his last remaining wounded followers in a corner. Kill me! Kill us! Now! Do it! Javi didn't wait to watch the end of a god. He ran to Miguel, cutting his bonds with his knife. Mijo, wake up! We have to go! He hauled his brother to his feet, throwing Miguel's arm over his shoulder. Behind him, he heard Constanzo's panicked screams, followed by a final desperate burst of automatic gunfire. The god, rather than face capture, had ordered his own execution. Javi didn't look back. He dragged his brother out of the shed, past Sarah, who was staring, defeated, as the Federal Times truck slammed to a halt, spotlights cutting the night. Javi, Miguel mumbled, his eyes rolling. Shut up. We're leaving. Javi didn't go toward the police. He didn't want questions. He didn't want medals. He'd seen the inside of the Federal Time system. He wanted out. He half-dragged, half-carried Miguel into the dark desert, away from the chaos, away from the gunfire and the screaming. He ran toward the truck Sarah had hidden. The sun was an angry red slit on the horizon when Javi's stolen truck, its tires bald, its engine screaming, fishtailed onto the American asphalt of Brownsville, Texas. He dumped the truck a block from the hospital and got Miguel into the emergency room, telling the nurse it was a bar fight in Matamoros. They'd take it from there. Javi sat on the curb outside, the morning sun feeling clean for the first time in years. He was covered in blood, his and others. His arm was broken. Every joint ached. He pulled a cigarette from a crumpled pack and lit it with a shaking hand. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small, bone-carved Times, NKC asterisk. It felt warm. He stared at it. This piece of a man. This symbol of a faith so powerful it could turn humans into monsters. A faith that had cost him his partner, his career, and almost his brother. A faith that had just died in a shed, begging for a bullet. He hadn't fought a demon. He hadn't killed a god. He'd fought a disease. A charismatic human disease that fed on fear and desperation. He'd looked into the face of a man who believed he was divine, and he had proven that he could bleed and die, just like anyone else. Just like Luis. The shaking in his hands began to subside. Javi Guerrero, the disgraced ex-cop, the drunk, the ghost, took a long drag from his cigarette. He looked at the Times NKC asterisk, then tossed the small, dark charm into the gutter, where it belonged. He watched a car crush it, and then he stood up and walked away into the American morning. He wasn't healed. He wasn't whole. But he was no longer haunted. He was just alive.